Hello, and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, and today I'll be sharing a bit about myself so we can get to know each other and kind of what I hope for the podcast. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. All right, so for our main discussion today, I'm going to be talking about myself. So again, I'm Camille A. Saunders. I'm a neurodivergent, bisexual, witch, and relationship anarchist who loves to support folks through sex and relationships therapy. My expertise is working with individuals and their partners who are struggling with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex. So I consider therapy sessions with me as a sacred space to talk about all the things that we might be societally shamed about and told are taboo. If you're in Washington State and are looking for a therapist and feel like we'd be a good fit, please reach out. You can fill out a contact form at the bottom of every page on my website at CamilleASaunders.com. So what else about me? I love tarot. It should be obvious since I created a podcast about it. But I also run a tarot meetup group in my local area called Let's Talk Tarot. If you're local to the greater Puget Sound area of Washington State, I'd love to see you there. I'll put a link to check out the meetup group in the show notes and on my website. You can always go to meetup.com/Tacoma Tarot Talks Meetup Group, or just search Let's Talk Tarot on there. What else about me? I'm an avid gardener and urban homesteader. I've lived in this area in the greater Puget Sound of Washington State since 2010, and I really love it. I live near the only rainforest in North America, the Hoh Rainforest, and I revel in the rain. I also live near, again, the Puget Sound, which is like an inlet of the Pacific Ocean, and so I love the water. I love to be around water. I always loved water as a kid. I just actually found I was going through like my baby books that my parents made for me when I was a kid, and it said that I first swam at 3 months old. So I've always loved the water. But anyway, for this area, this time of year can actually be challenging. We're, maybe at least when I'm recording this now, about a week, a little bit more after the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. And where I live in this area, it can be really challenging mental health wise because the amount of hours of night we have is 14, which is a lot. And our summers, though, are glorious because it sort of swings the other way, and we get about 14 hours of daylight, which is a very long, fun day in this area. So what else about me? I'm a plant lady and a cat mom, and I live with my boyfriend of 9 years. I joke that I have 4,000 plants on my property, and although I haven't counted, it might be close. I started my journey getting to know plants when I lived in a studio apartment in Seattle in 2016 and only had a windowsill that I filled with houseplants. Since then, I've moved to larger spaces and now live on just shy of a quarter acre in a small town. I live about a block from my town's main street and about a 25-minute drive from Tacoma, which is a large city. So it's more urban than most people expect when they say I'm a homesteader, especially if people have looked at my photos on Instagram. I'd love to move out of the city and into the woods and onto more acreage in the next couple of years, but for now, I try to make the most of the land I do have. And we've moved to this property in 2020, and I've greatly enjoyed making it my own. I went to graduate school to be a marriage and family therapist starting in 2019, and therefore ended up doing most of my schooling during the COVID-19 lockdown and ongoing pandemic. This really informed a lot of how I run my business, my self-care practices, and pushed me to figure out how to work with my ideal clients who are queer, polyamorous, witchy, and chronically ill. Right now, I work from home and I see clients online only, and that works well for me. Going to graduate school during lockdown taught me that I have to make time to get off my computer, out of the office, and into nature in order to survive and keep my nervous system regulated. It's been so important to me to figure out how to not just exist in my mind, but be in tune with my body and actually like out in the world. I do get migraines, and they're definitely worse when I work long hours or I stare at a computer screen all day and I don't move much. I'm sure other people can relate. So, the last 5 years have definitely forced me to realize if I don't listen to my body, it's going to force me to. The last piece I'm going to talk about today is that I grew up going to what my mom called hippie church. My grandfathers were both ministers of Unity Church, and so I grew up in Christianity, going to church weekly, and my family being heavily involved. Um, and that type of Christianity that we participated in was pretty hippie, non denominational, and spiritual. Um, that sort of Christian identity waned a bit when we moved to Washington. I was born in Georgia, across the US. So when we moved to Washington, it's actually considered the most unchurched state in the nation. And that basically just means it has the least amount of people in the state that identify as churchgoers. So, as someone who grew up watching The Wizard of Oz and being terrified of the Wicked Witch of the West, I've come a long way in my spiritual journey, especially since I now identify as a witch and I can't wait to go see the sing along version of the new Wicked movie. I'll have to do a whole episode on tarot and religion at some point down the road, but personally, I went from identifying as Christian to not really identifying as religious, then to spiritual, and to now identifying as a witch. I'll stop here for today with my background since this episode is already getting long, but we'll get to know each other better over the next month, and more information about me will definitely get sprinkled in. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. Today I'm pulling from the Therapist Who Tarot deck, which has prompts by Drea Bloom and images by Rebecca Bloom. And again, I'll have links to them and perhaps that deck in the episode description on my website. So this deck is a little bit different. So it has sort of the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith structure to it on one side, and all the images are done in watercolor. So sometimes it's a bit abstract. But the other side of the cards, instead of just having sort of the same image or sort of like a cohesive design on the back of each card, it actually has 3 questions that you can ask yourself or that sort of relate to the card. And there's no like tarot deck book for this deck. So you pull the card, you can look at it, if you know sort of the traditional meanings of the cards, you can tune into that. There's usually a word underneath the name of the card, and then on the back it has these 3 questions. So it's sort of a more like ask a question, pull a card kind of deck. But yeah, and it can be used in a therapeutic setting as well. So the 2 folks that created this, are therapists, and I learned about it and learned from them at a Therapist Who Tarot retreat that I went to in, I think, May of 2024. All right, so today I pulled the Magician. So again, the Magician is considered the number 1 card of the deck of the major arcana. Usually the Fool is considered 0, and then the Magician is 1. So it's like the second card of the deck, but considered 1. On this card, the word underneath the Magician, the name of the card, says focused. And then if I look on the back of it, it says, whom do you love and who loves you? How can you best focus on self-care this week? And how can you best protect your heart? So very love focused, kind of that self-care, boundaries. I know boundaries have been coming up in my kind of journaling and tarot in the last couple of days, which again always feels appropriate after the holiday season when You might have to, right, work on those boundaries or really hold your boundaries, or might realize some boundaries that you need to employ for next year or next time you hang out with these people. And when I look at this card, it's a very purple, a little moody, like the image is. It does have the sort of like image of a person, although on this card it's very abstract. There's no faces, there's not even really any like limbs on the person. It's sort of like a really big purple emanating human figure. And then around it, there's sort of almost like how I imagine when people talk about like your ancestors, like show up, your guides. It sort of has these like people in and around the image at the bottom, but they're smaller. So almost like in your subconscious or in the background showing up there. And yeah, I can really imagine that connecting to that question of whom do you love and who loves you, right? Just because people pass on or pass away, that doesn't mean that your love for them goes away. And same for them, or at least in my belief system. All right. So yeah, that's the card for today, the Magician. Um, all right. So thanks again for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast will come out daily, Monday through Friday, for all of 2025. And thanks so much for joining me on this third episode of Everyday Tarot. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.